But it's great that we're all here. This idea of Zen of Hard Times, you know, some people are having hard times and some people are not. So I thought it would be kind of a nice idea to get together with you guys and just see how you're coping. I've had this idea since this started that the unstable people of the world would soon be murdering each other in their homes. And I've actually heard very little of that, but I understand the divorce rate is increasing. And you know, I find myself honestly kind of going up and down. I have to not watch the news every day, although I subscribe to CNN reports and the New York Times, and I catch most of what's going on that way. But even independently of that, some days I just, you know, I find myself in a bad mood or even angry or resentful toward the poor people in my home. And seemingly without reason. I mean, it's just, and I do realize that there's a lot in the air. Just think about the Earth's auric field, the amount of chaos that's roiling around there, and the fear and all those other feelings. So I've developed some coping mechanisms, and I would expect that all of you have been doing the same thing. Of course, meditation being the foremost among those, but maybe some other things. And so this is an open forum, and the idea is just to hear from you and hear how you're coping and what's going on in your corner of the world. I see Andrea in France and Gary and Donna in California, Alston, New Jersey. Luca, where are you?
I'm in Italy.
Oh, beautiful. I bet you have some stories to tell. You guys
Sure.
got the hardest hit. What can you add to this conversation?
Oh, now the situation in Italy is getting much better because we have been one of the first country to come into the virus. So we have been experiencing several weeks of lockdown. So from next month, I would say in Italy, all the activities are reopening and restarting, including pubs, restaurants, hotels, and so on. So we are truly coming out from the lockdown and we are going back to normal, let's say normal life, even if nothing is truly the same as before.
Yes.
So we're getting back to normality, let's say.
Are people scared of being around each other? You know, cautious about going outside even now?
So and so. Some people yes and some people no. So this is the distribution of the population. So we are some people which are very sensitive and some people who doesn't care, really. Even if the figures we have been experiencing here are, let's say, dramatic because we had 31,000 people dying for the virus.
Wow.
Figures of today is 31,670 something.
And you know, there's such a wonderful spirit in Italy. I mean, we saw a video on CNN of Italians who lived in this huge apartment building, and they were all on the balconies waving and singing and talking to one another. And there was a famous opera singer who was singing out to everyone across from her. And you know, I suppose the responses are as different as the people. And it's not just from that country to country would have any differences, but that there's so many variations on in the psyche.
The drama for us is that Italian people are very cohesive, so we are used to stay very close one to the other. When you talk with someone, you touch him, and then being, let's say, forced to keep some distance and to not talk with anyone, so not grouping and so on is as you have been saying before, is dramatic for some kind of people because it's just the opposite of what they are looking to do.
Yes, loss of spontaneity. And that's the thing that strikes me. Is that going to continue even after we come out of this? Late, it may be late this year, really, before people feel comfortable mixing in crowds again, if not next year. And what will be the changes? Kind of like the 9/11 instituted permanent changes in the way people behave. With much more guardedness and I don't want to say paranoia, but certainly people are more wary now of crowds, thinking what can happen. I suppose that's the Delta radar, extending out to say, am I safe? Yeah. And I suppose that maybe having good Delta radar will be a saving grace for all of us, because if we extend our Delta and it says we're safe, then maybe we need not be so wary. Yeah. I see Maria del Rocio Pozo. Are you also in Italy, or where are you? Spain?
Hi, I'm from Mexico.
Mexico, lovely. How are things there?
Well, not very nice. I'm in Cuernavaca, south from Mexico City, and things are as in other parts of the world, I imagine. Not very nice.
You
But
have
I'm
a
staying at home. I'm a university professor, so I'm paid. I don't have any problem, but I can see many people are having a very hard time.
Wow. Yeah, my husband's a university professor too, so we're not having any financial troubles, but boy, a lot of people are. This is serious business. Yeah, aren't there 20 million people in Mexico City?
Yes,
Huge population, right?
it's the largest city.
Yeah, and so you're really in close quarters, and I suppose the isolation is even more intense on that basis.
Yes, but the isolation is not enforced. So we have a left-wing government that is, I think, is doing things in the right direction. But anyway, we are doing okay.
Not like Oksana, who lives at the top of a mountain with a small community of very cool people around there. So Oksana, I guess you guys are isolated anyway, right?
Oh yes, Judith. It's our lifestyle, living in the woods, seeing only quite a small circle of friends. We are very lucky here in Australia, I should say, because of the numbers. They're very low. They're almost disappearing. Again, we live in a very small area, and mainly highly concentrated, highly populated areas are at more risk than us. The government already eased the restrictions, so we are even allowed to have friends over and, like, say, a couple of parents and a couple of kids coming for a visit is now fine. Not like big parties, and that's why, if you can you see Klim?
So you're hooked up. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
All right, great. We've got a subject to beam to.
And
Cheers.
Judith, I can tell you he's showing alpha with eyes open.
Oh, fantastic. So your changes are going to be interesting to see, if we see any changes with somebody that advanced in brainwaves. Yeah. So before we turn to that, can I just ask Andrea Pennington what's happening there in Cannes, France?
This is day 6 of us being somewhat out of quarantine. I live down in the south of France in Cannes, as you mentioned, and we're considered a green zone. We had a lot of cases, but they were mainly in nursing homes. So our city this Monday started letting people go back to school and back to work. Everyone is still walking around in masks, and when you go to the grocery store, you've still got to keep your distance. But the energy is starting to feel lighter, and people are walking around. The beach is not yet open here, but I hear in Nice and another neighboring city, the beaches are open. You can't sunbathe, but at least you can be near the water, which has kind of been the biggest torture, to be in such a beautiful space and you can't even go to the beach.
Medicinal.
But, yeah, exactly. But all is well. We're staying positive and being healthy.
It sounds like everybody's kind of in the same boat, but I wonder, back to my first comments, is everyone's emotional state very high and stable? Or do you find that you have days where you're different from the other days, which is not usually the case for me? I'm usually very even, but not so much now. What's happening? Can anybody say anything about that?
We've been had it pretty easy around here. California is going into sort of stage 2 unlockdown, whatever they call it. And our county has been very good because we've only had 2 cases, and the people weren't even in the county. They were just from the county. And they picked it up on someplace else and never came back here. And so we've had no cases in this county at all. And so everybody's been kind of ignoring everything. It really hasn't changed much for us. I being an introvert, I'm on my computer all day long, so nothing has changed really. And Donna's works at home all the time, so it has slowed her down, with maybe 1 or 2 people coming in, where she's been very careful to vet them before they came in. So it's been slow, but now it's picking up again. Emotionally, we've been pretty much on an even keel, not much change at all. So it's been pretty even keel around here. I know a lot of people are fussing about the fact they can't go out and get a haircut or something. I mean, my hair is a mess. So I'm going back to my old hippie days. I'm thinking I'm going to let it grow down to my shoulders again. So otherwise, that's pretty much the way it is here.
It's the same for me. I mean, my poor grandson had tickets to 7 concerts paid for and was supposed to go and tour his university and didn't get to go back to school, and he's 22 years old, and he was upset to begin with. And my daughter, well, she only goes and sees her boyfriend, but I will say that she hadn't had a car for 3 years, and she got a car, and then there's no place to go. It made no difference to me whatsoever. I mean, literally, like you, I work all day in the house, rarely leave the house, and it's been cold, and I certainly never go outside in the cold. For people like us who either have our own cottage industry or are retired, it's not that big a deal, but other people.
We were supposed to be in France right now with Dawson.
That's right.
And we had to cancel all of that. Our hotel, fortunately, our hotel didn't charge us. It was non-refundable. So they said when we, first signed up with the hotel, and they just closed down like a month before we were even supposed to be there. So they never even charged us, which was nice. And we got an extension on the airlines for a year. So I'm not quite sure what we're going to do with that. We don't have any place to go in particular. We were thinking it's Norwegian. So, where does Norwegian go? It's like,
well, if it goes to Paris, you have someplace. Right. If it goes to Paris, I know you can find someplace in Paris to go.
Yeah.
Nobody else has had any emotional ups and downs. It's just me. I'm starting to feel pretty bad about that.
Well, having a teenager in the house just by myself, that's been super challenging. She's already been homeschooled, so that wasn't a big adjustment, but not having the outlet of being able to connect with her friends and, again, going to the beach. She's gotten a little stir crazy, and it's been challenging for me. I've had not too many lows, but there has been some frustration because,
she's also going through a growth spurt. So I feel like all I ever do is like cook consistently, constantly, and then have to, you know, try to keep her energy high and uplifted so she's not so disappointed.
And think about the people who have 3 and 4 small children at home. I heard something, I don't know, I guess it was some op-ed piece that said, and not only them, their parents that are having problems, it's the people who live downstairs, because suddenly now they're home for 24/7. Yeah, I mean, I guess what we're saying here, by your lack of comments, is that you're feeling pretty fortunate. I would just, before we start our healing, turn though to Paula, because Paula just joined the network, which I hope that all of you will send me an email with your information and join the Mind Mirror Portal Network. And in the course of our conversation, Paula said that she started working with doing neurofeedback with people who are addiction, substance abuse problems, ADD? No, just addiction. Can you just tell us what's happening with that population? Because
it's an inpatient, all male unit that I go to. It's in the woods. And it was funny is the week that my office shuttered itself and locked the doors, I got a call from this rehab asking me if I would do nursing. It started out as nursing up there. And, you know, I had nothing to do. I'm like, absolutely, you know, I could use the money. And so before this, I always worked with one veteran at a time for free. And there was a point where I didn't have a veteran. So I told them I would work with one of their clients who had been in and out of rehab 30 times. And I did it for free. And he went back and had such good results that they said, how about if you come up and do neurofeedback? So that's what I'm doing for them. So I have a little bit of nursing responsibilities and a little bit of neurofeedback responsibilities. And I'm also doing meditation with the guys 1 day a week. So it's been really rewarding. I feel like a mom to all these guys. You know, like for where my mind could be at this point and where it is, I think it kind of made me prioritize what's important. Because I do have 2 family members that are on the front lines working in ERs. And then my daughter, she was working in the ER in Lebanon at the VA, and she's a member of the Navy Reserves, and she got deployed. So she is now in Guam, maybe missing her wedding and her honeymoon, and she missed her house closing. She got married on the way to the airport. So they did a video chat with the court in order to get the marriage license, and then she signed the papers on the way to the airport to be deployed.
what a story. I'll tell this to my grandson. He'll feel better about missing his concert.
But you know what? I think it's all good. She's in a good mental place. She knows, like, her now husband, he's at home taking care of 3 dogs and 4 cats in this new home that she hasn't been in yet. And they're relying on each other, and I think it's all good.
So much is about perspective too, isn't it? I mean, for me, I never would have had the time to spend 2 solid months, literally 24/7 on this Mind Mirror portal, but for COVID. I mean, I had all kinds of travel engagements and practitioner trainings. I mean, I canceled 3 separate practitioner trainings with multiple people in them. And you just have to say, well, they'll come back, and the portal needed to get up first. And maybe that's going to serve more people in better ways than what I was doing before. And from my perspective.
And I don't know, I just want to throw this out because I don't know if anybody else kind of experienced this before COVID happened. I felt a little uneasy, almost expecting something to happen. And then when it did, it was almost like a relief, like, oh, this was what was coming. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that. I traveled to visit my daughter in Louisiana in very late February. And when I got back, I had this weird thing going on in my energy field where I kind of felt disconnected from my energy field. Felt like it was not completely harmonized or integrated with my body. And I came back saying, I feel like I've been poisoned. And it wasn't COVID, but something was in the air. I felt something was really wrong. And then, of course, it was going full blast, but in the United States, we weren't paying very much attention to it at that point. It just poisoning, the feeling that I'd been poisoned somehow. Anybody else have any intuitive awarenesses about it? Where was our delta?
I didn't have any sense that anything was happening. However, I heard something recently that I was just wondering if anybody else has heard this. I had heard that the MMR vaccine apparently was giving people protection against COVID.
I was just asking Gary if by MMR he was talking about measles, mumps, and rubella.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. And apparently it's the rubella portion of the vaccine. The virus, the rubella virus, is very similar to the COVID, and they're thinking that that gives some sort of protection. And of course, I don't know if that counts for us old folks who got all of that naturally when we were kids, and they didn't have the vaccines then. We just got sick. But that supposedly gives lifelong protection against measles and rubella. So I was just wondering if anybody else had heard about that or seen anything on that.
I haven't. I don't.
Okay,
Well, of course, what we're all hoping for is vaccine, isn't it? And good luck with 300 million Americans alone. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, sometimes I think about it, and the totality of it, the reality of it hits me. And I'm just utterly astonished suddenly to see the entire world fall to its knees economically and in terms of breaking from what we normally do and how we normally live by a virus which is smart enough to morph. And it just astonishes me. And my husband and I, the only thing we really have gotten out to do is that, thank God, spring is coming to Pennsylvania. Thank you. And so sometimes we go and walk in this stunningly beautiful state park. And we were just walking through the park one day, and I was opining. And he said that he thinks that the biggest effect that COVID has had is to make people understand their connectedness. That we are all one people and vulnerable to the same things, have the same needs, and that sense of connectedness may be the cause of an awakening of compassion and a change in the way we view things, such as the frontline workers, the service industry people who are paid so meagerly and yet are the only way that we can get a curbside hamburger or whatever, I don't eat hamburgers, but pizza, just the general idea that our perspectives are tilting in a kaleidoscopic kind of way, a little bit. And with chaos theory, even the tiniest shift in perspectives can make profound differences all around the world. So every time somebody in my family usually undergoes some of their nonstop catastrophes, the only way I console myself is to say, there's light in it somewhere. And sometimes, it takes a while to see what the light is, but it's always there. It's always there. If nothing else, because the degree of their suffering has brought them closer to their spirit. And so that was the second goal of this program. Whether you're having any sort of emotional ups and downs or living this way, same way you always do, we are a community, and anything we do to amplify our connection with each other and to raise our vibration, of course, is going to help us individually and all of those people around us. So the idea here, it was Tony Boland's idea. There you are. Hi, Tony. So yeah, so tell a little bit about this idea that you had. What were your thoughts?
Well, I've noticed a lot of people around me are negative, partly because they're watching news and social media is negative. And I decided to develop an app that would change people's thinking, that would contribute to people's thinking. And so I come up with, I have three things. My app, its name is Cosmo, after my German Shepherd behind me in the picture. People who use the app are prompted to give praise. And specifically, praise heals yourself, and it also heals the object of your praise, whatever you praise. And so my app is designed that when someone is praised, if they choose to receive a notification, they'll get a notification that they're being praised. But I don't want the person that does the praising to be known. I want it to be anonymous because I don't want egos being in this at all. So there's three things. There's praise, there's gratitude, and there's forgiveness. And my app is very simple. You just simply enter the object of praise, or you select a person from your list of contacts, and that's it. Same for gratitude and same for forgiveness. Now, to go along with what you said earlier, Judith, how's everybody doing? Everybody around me, everybody I know are doing well. They're okay. But I walked out of the grocery store yesterday, bought me some wine, and this girl was in front of me, and she left before I did. When I got to the exit of the store, she was sitting on a bench crying her eyes out. And so I suspect there's a lot of suffering going on, and people aren't showing it. They're not letting it out. So I think my app is going to help send positive waves throughout the universe.
Beautiful. How do we get this app? When's it going to be available? Tell us a bit more about that.
It's being developed for Android and Apple devices. I expect to have it out in June. We're beta testing it right now. It's pretty neat. I like it. It's consumed me. I have my regular business and it's doing really good, but I've lost interest in it. I'm more interested in the app I'm working on. So I find that very strange to be going on in my life right now.
When may I ask, did you start working on this app?
January.
Did COVID prompt this, or was it just coincidental?
No, it was just coincidental. I noticed some close friends being a lot of negativity. They're mostly Trump haters and political stuff. They just can't get it out of their head. And these are good people. These are like wonderful people, beautiful people, but they're caught up in negativity and they need something. They need a way to get out.
Well, keep us apprised and let us know when it's available. And I think that'd be a wonderful activity. And what we're going to do today is a form of that. Do you want to lead us in it, in this meditation, Tony?
I would love to. All right. I want to do 3 parts. That is praise, gratitude, and forgiveness. Realize that the praise, you heal yourself and the object of your praise. Emma Hopkins, back in the early 1900s, wrote a very good book about spirituality, and she said praise was the surest way to heal something. And so I'll start this by saying, I'll read from my app: heal yourself and those around you through the power of praise. The best way to express the power of love is through praise. Through repetition, develop a mindset of praise for all things.
And so let me slow you a second and say, Oksana, do you have your subject? And do we need to know our, I don't want to say victim, our recipient in order to praise them, or do we just intuitively know what to say or to feel in extending praise? How would that work?
Well, with the application, you would need to know their name, all right? Unless you put in something like mother, brother, friend, whatever, something like that. But I believe in this setup, we can see our subject and we can praise our subject. We can be grateful for our subject and we can forgive him. Even though we have nothing to forgive him for, the feeling of forgiveness will resonate within us.
So Oksana, do you want to share screens to see brainwaves? And can you introduce your subject a little bit more?
Yes, Judith, here we are. So this is my friend Klim. So he's born Russian in Moscow, but he was raised in States, by the way. Klim also has a degree in psychology, but he never tried the mind mirror before. And we just tried it before, our meeting today. And during the meeting, he played a little bit with it. And he already made a couple of interesting observations that I think would be good to share. And then I would ask you, Judith, once again, just to summarize instructions kind of for everyone, in the group, what we are doing, and maybe some more instructions for Klim, because it's a new experience for him. So he has a good idea of what he's supposed to do, but being a psychologist and just life researcher, you can understand he's quite well aware of his inner states.
Hi there, everybody. Yeah, I was just trying this machine for the first time, and it was really interesting seeing how the different states happen with different thoughts. Just noticing how much the alpha waves go off when I sip a cup of tea and have just full satisfaction and in the moment, and the alpha waves just go off to the tops, and then the theta waves there at the bottom whenever I'm listening to what everybody's saying in the group, or the delta. And the delta waves, when I'm sensing what other people are feeling and thinking and talking about in the group, they just go off completely. And it's very interesting. It's great.
Truly a mirror of the mind, right? Something occurs to me that we could do a combination. I mean, I would love to watch his brainwaves as we go through the different stages, but I wonder if we could do Tony's, let Tony guide through these 3 different stages to begin with. And Oksana, with your putting, an event marker between each one. And lastly, just send him healing energy in an open way so that there's no intention other than for healing. And then one other thing that I would ask, just a old habit that I really like, is that maybe right now before we even get started, just to extend our energies to each other in kind of an oversoul kind of way, so that we feel our connection with one another here across the world, Australia, France, Mexico, California, East Coast, Texas. And then that way we would be acting as one mind, one heart, no matter what we're doing. Ooh, it feels nice already. So Oksana, do you want to share screens and share brainwaves? Looking good. Okay, so I'm turning off my audio right now, and we'll leave it to Tony.
Okay, everyone. Heal yourself and those around you through the power of praise. The best way to express the power of love is through praise. Through repetition, develop a mindset of praise for all things. Praise.
And Oksana, if you could remind Clint to just make sure he's keeping his eyes closed so we have a stable sort of a consistency and know what we're looking at. And may I say, Tony, that I'm certainly seeing some praise work with Kling with the Sim Gamma coming out. Do you have another stage that you want to take us through, Tony? Oksana putting in a marker at this point.
Let's move over to gratitude. Let's feel gratitude for everyone on our call. And let's feel gratitude towards our subject.
Tony, do you want to go to the third stage with Oksana placing another marker?
Yes. So everyone, forgive yourself.
And maybe this would be a good time for everyone to send intention to Kling that his self-forgiveness be so complete that anything but perfect love and light just completely flows out of his body, mind, and spirit. We just amplify his intention to self-forgive so that we're in this mix with him. And then Tony, do you have anything else you want to add before we close your part of it and go to the group amplification, collective healing intention toward Kling?
That was it, Judith.
Okay, so maybe Oksana, if you'll set another marker, we'll make sure that his eyes stay closed, he's nice and still. And so we're all connected together in this field. And there are other people connected with us on all dimensions and levels of consciousness. There are even people who don't even know that we're doing this today, who are just a repository of good energy. We can even sweep outside of our community with the intention to network with them. And as we muster our energies and our intentions, we can just be aware of connecting with each other as well. Well, I'm full of energy and I trust that you guys are too. So maybe we can stop here and save the session and get some feedback from our subject as to what felt the most powerful. He hasn't seen his brainwaves because of the eyes being closed, but we've been watching his brainwaves, and maybe if we start with you and get your subjective feedback, we can make some objective matches for you. How's everybody feel? Good? If you want to turn back on your videos and make sure everybody survived this. Yes. Our subject first. Talk to us. What were you experiencing?
It's good. It's just going along with the different stages and the feelings and kind of reaching out there with thoughts and feelings and heart, mind. And, do admit I had to go back and forth a little bit, especially with the eyes closed thing, and like forestall the curiosity to look at the brainwaves and just to let go of that curiosity. And that kept on coming and going a bit. But yeah, it was good. It was really fun. It's interesting. I'm curious to know what it was. And yeah,
Was
there's a
there
lot
anyone?
of. There were also like background noises and things, and some background things going on that I was just feeling like it's interesting when I watch it with my eyes open. I can see how brainwaves react to those external stimuli, and so I'm sure there was just the interesting observation of how things go like that in the timeline of the whole meditation. So.
Judith, maybe you could remind of different stages and if Klim is able to refer back to his experiences.
Yes, and well, Tony, you want to say something about that? I remember what they were, but
I really don't have anything to say. I was fascinated with his brainwaves. I definitely saw some awakened mind vibes coming through there.
yeah. So the first segment was praise, and the second was gratitude, and the third was self-forgiveness, and then the fourth was just us sending healing intention to you. I felt a huge difference in the segments, and just wondered if you did.
Yeah, each segment had its own different energy with it, you know, and focus. Yeah, kind of like, because it was a group thing as well, so it was, without knowing everybody out there, I just felt that gratitude for everybody, and that the forgiveness for everybody, the praise for everybody, the love for everybody, and feeling that going out, expanding beyond that as well, beyond just our group and the places that we are in the world. And for a while there, I was like feeling and watching the earth and all our different points on the earth, and that was a very beautiful feeling.
Awesome. Totally awesome.
Okay. So being a journalist by nature, I just have to grill people till I get the information I seek. So pardon me for this. Was there any point, I mean, I understand having some distractions. So did you feel any difference between the segments? Any of you feel a difference?
I have a couple of questions, one for Tony and the other one for Judith. What was that you expected to see? Since praise, gratitude, forgiveness are positive feelings and character strengths that are somehow overlapping in one way or the other. Did you expect to see different patterns? That's the question for Tony. And what was what you saw, Judy? Because I didn't see much difference between the stages.
Well, you know, that's a great question. And certainly other mind mirror practitioners on here can weigh in. I was thinking about something that I asked Isabel Cade when I visited her in Bath, England a few years ago. And I said, did you ever go and measure anybody on the mind mirror inside of a crop circle? And she just laughed and said, nope, that was completely impossible. We did do it, but we couldn't tell what it meant because we couldn't tell if the crop circle was having an effect or if the person's consciousness, in terms of their perception of the sacredness or the nonsense of the crop circle, was what the mind mirror was reading. And I think we're in the same situation here, where we would expect for the activities of his consciousness to be the primary brainwaves that we're seeing. But it's also, and this was the big experiment, possible and perhaps even likely, not even perhaps, almost certain that through distant healing, which is basically what we were doing, that we would be affecting his brainwaves. I mean, I did see a lot of amplitude changes. I didn't, your timer clock wasn't on there, Oksana, so I couldn't make notes about what we were doing according to what timing in the session. Maybe you made notes, but.
You know, from what I could see, he was showing beautiful, I don't know, rounded patterns with gamma, like the ultimate pattern, you know, this universal consciousness pattern. And then, yes, he...
At the end, especially, once we weighed in.
Yeah, especially in the end. I mean, for me, I think like gratitude was quite powerful, and the last part was quite powerful, showing similar patterns. I mean, they all were similar, but and yes, I could see that most of the time he was holding like beautiful, either, you know, awakened, or it will be gamma synchrony with his gamma, and universal consciousness patterns with holding stable alpha, searching and shooting lots of delta. At times he can see gamma, you know, kind of questioning what's going on again. But I mean, really, I could tell that he was in a beautiful state. And sitting next to him, I mean, it felt like by the end, you kind of start feeling more and more energy. He opened his, you know, hands kind of to receive or whatever he felt. And it was, to me, like just, you know, body observations looked like he was almost shaking. So it's like it was overwhelming energy when everyone jumped in. You know, when you said like everyone sends to amplify his forgiveness first, and then in the very end to amplify his healing. So that's
And that goes back to Maria's question, is that when there's a coupling of fields, there's an amplification of the energy. So I would have expected to see exactly what we did see. I mean, he did, I thought I noticed that that in the gratitude segment that his brainwaves amplified and then started to round. And then I thought I noticed that when we came into the last segment of self-forgiveness, his delta shot way out, and Oksana had to go from 17 to 50 microvolts to see the extent of his delta. Now, we don't know if that was him becoming aware of us or us feeding into his delta, because both things were happening simultaneously.
I just got to add to it that right at that time, Judith, I just got to add to it that right at that time, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Reiki, but when we opened it up to everybody in that kind of reflective, it just, the thought came to me that, like, you know, we're going on a mind mirror. I was just feeling also like the feeling mirror, and the like love mirror, kind of a Reiki mirror. So I just came out, and like when Oksana was saying that I opened up my hands and started shaking a bit, I just really felt that Reiki energy and was sending it back, like, because I felt so much coming from everybody that I just opened up to just sending it right back. So it was a very great, beautiful, cyclic feeling with everybody. Thank you.
You know, and thank you. It was really a big bump for us too. I'm sure we'll get everybody's feedback in a minute, but you know, that delta I've seen over and over, amplification when there's an intersection of fields on the unconscious level. That very often is what triggers this amplification of gamma that we saw, especially in the top half of his pattern, as Oksana was saying. I mean, I did see some rounding in the gratitude segment, but that last segment, he was, as Oksana said, he was moving to a universal consciousness 100 hertz pattern. I mean, it still needed to round out at the bottom, but especially at the top. And this is partly why I said, let's stop, because it was getting to be too much energy for me. I felt personally way more energy in the gratitude section because I connected with each of you and Oksana for all the work she does for this program. And I even connected with Max and Anna, you know, Max Cade and Anna Wise, and certainly connected with you guys in Australia. And that was really powerful. So for feedback for Tony, what would be really interesting, what will be interesting is to get feedback from all of us here so you can see which, if any, segment people felt more intensely. But then, of course, we come back to the original question. Is it because I was connecting with all of you and having feelings that I started feeling the energy vibration then? Or was it because gratitude in general does that? So you can't really figure that out. But let's hear from you guys and see if we can't give Tony some feedback on his app. Jim, you are super sensitive to subtle energies and able to travel high places and leap across tall buildings and all that stuff. If you're still with us, I wonder if you felt any difference in the 4 segments.
I was in and out of emotional involvement and analytical involvement. I was busy trying to integrate in my mind what I was seeing on the display to go with Tony's categories and try to come up with a sum of energies for the various things that were going on. And so that kind of took me out of the emotional involvement. But to answer your short question, when I dipped into the emotional part, I could feel the energy. And especially at the end, I could feel the energy. So it was a profound experience for me. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Excellent. It's gorgeous patterns. I mean, gratitude to him for having such gorgeous patterns.
Yeah, I'm curious, does he meditate regularly? Do you know?
Good question.
Yeah, fairly regularly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do it quite a bit.
I can add, Judith, it's his lifestyle. That's how it feels,
I agree with
because
you.
he always looks in
I
meditative
think he's
state.
a calm person.
Oh, I don't know. He should answer this question himself, because, you know, people may look calm on the surface, but you never know what's going on inside.
Yeah, they're.
This is interesting observing it. Yeah, we all have the different states that we go back and forth and into. I don't know if you just heard what I just said or not. But yeah, it's great observing it.
Yeah, and we saw those shifts in your consciousness, certainly. You know, so you know association of the awakened mind with the aha is the unification of all the levels of awareness, and thus all the frequencies of awareness, in a split second, that can be prolonged, that says, oh, I get it. So when your mind wandered, you know, your alpha would drop, the beta would increase. The reason I asked if you had some stress during the self-forgiveness, because if Oksana had shut off the gamma, we would have been looking at some stress beta during that time. So did you feel any stress during the self-forgiveness?
Yeah, I felt like at first at the self-forgiveness, I tried to kind of hammer myself with as much negativity as I could, and just feel like what it would feel like to you know, have something to really forgive, and just like every kind of thing that I could think of that I've done that was possibly wrongful, I kind of brought myself towards, and then felt that forgiveness.
This is where the bulldog journalism works out, because we totally saw that stress beta. We saw it. And I pulled back from watching your brain waves, because I don't know if I picked it up from you or it was just something I did, and then I would put this to the group and say, did anyone else do this? The first thing I did was I went into the things that I beat myself up over, and I sat with that. It was probably 30 seconds, and I got stuck in it, and I went, no, this is not what Tony wants us to do. Tony wants us to fill with love and light and let that stuff go. So, because that's what self-forgiveness is. It isn't remembering what we did wrong, where we failed, what we hate ourselves for, why we feel unworthy. But still, my mind went there first. Did anybody else's go in that direction to begin with?
Of course.
Yeah. And Austin, what'd you do in the self-forgiveness?
Well, I couldn't help but think about the things I need to forgive myself for. I did feel an energy. I think we're all having similar thoughts.
So Tony, this is great feedback. Go ahead, Bethany, you're gonna say something?
Well, this just happens to be a subject that I'm working with on the athletes a lot. And I've been studying this pretty intensely, and just to give you some thoughts on maybe a different way of forgiveness. So this idea that in the Course in Miracles basically says that anytime we're in guilt, or we're holding ourselves in a guilty place, it means that we're in time. So it means, if we think we need forgiveness, it means we kind of felt like we did something bad in the past that somehow needs to be rectified in the future, which eclipses the present moment. So anytime we're in a guilt cycle, we're in the ego. And if we're in the ego, the whole role of the spiritual life is that we're waking up to remember that we're eternal beings. So we're waking up in this life, forgetting about not buying this third dimensional reality, not drinking the Kool-Aid here, but remembering that we're these eternal beings. And so the idea that the Course in Miracles says we don't do anything bad. You think you did something bad, and in time, you think you did something bad because you're thinking in time. But time is going to roll up like a carpet and disappear when we when we remember who we are, when we remember that we're eternal. So the idea that in time we may have felt as though we've done something bad, and it basically says you can't make something true and then try to forgive it. Like, you can't affirm it that it's true and then try to say it didn't happen. It's just the idea that we're all in this illusion, and we all acted from our incomplete awareness, and we've all done things that we're not proud of. But if we can remember that we're playing this game here, and we're all inviting each other to wake up. So with the athletes, I've been having them do a lot of holding great love when they're thinking of things that they're hurting over or that they feel guilty over. In fact, I'll have people go pick the worst thing they've ever done in their entire life, go there, scan the body, where is it, send it love, and just see if you can just hold it with love at the same time. So it's been a deep, powerful work. That's just such a great idea, Tony. I just have found it and you know what I find is that even if you look at your keys or your phone or we project guilt onto all sorts of stuff. So I noticed one day I picked up my keys and I'm like, I'm seeing guilt in my keys. Like, like we're holding ourselves accountable to like ridiculous accountability that we're supposed to like know everything around every corner. And, no, I'm just supposed to know what I'm supposed to know at the moment, and Spirit will give me what I need. And, so anyway, so I was so grateful for this community, that I'm on this call with these amazing people, that we're sending love. I mean, that we're all open to this and we're measuring it. I was just so grateful. So anyways, those are just deep thoughts that I've been having on forgiveness. And it's been the most powering thing to just receive forgiveness. Like, how do you just receive yourself, warts and all? It's not that someday you're going to get better or you're going to make up for the bad thing you did. It's the fact that right now we are being cherished, we are being loved, we are being bathed in gorgeousness. And he really was letting that in. I could see the struggle at first. That's what we do. And then he was allowing the gorgeousness to come in. And I'd be curious if we could do a follow-up with him and just check in the next couple of weeks. Like, have you noticed something?
Bethany,
right?
you're such a researcher. Such a born researcher. But what she says, Tony, I think is really terrific feedback. This whole line of thought here is that if there is within people, as we've just seen with several of us, the tendency for the mind to go into a place of, oh, look what I've done, this icky, sticky place. What is it I need to forgive myself for? The moment you say to yourself, oh, wait, I'm not supposed to be doing that, then you just self-remembered. So this is a wonderful cue for increase in self-awareness. This cue that you're giving to people to self-forgive, if they go through that two-stage process that we're talking about here, then they go, oh, what a different feeling. Oh, that was nasty down there, but oh, look at all this love and light. So then you self-remember, and that's how you condition the evolutionary expansion of consciousness, is through that self-remembering, like Bethany said. So you're really, I think you're really on to something here.
Well, the last thing I got to say about it is we were giving energy to Clem, but we were receiving far more than we were giving. And so we need to observe ourselves over the next 24 hours and look for that reward.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that. Yep.
Thank you for that. How about anybody else? Comments about your experiences or your observations of Clem's brain waves, or just your observations about yourself? Luca, you have something?
Yes. For me, the two most, let's say, interesting steps of the meditation has been the gratitude one and the self-forgiveness. And at the same time, I was opening my eyes during these steps to look at the brainwave patterns on the screen. And guess what? It was exactly the step where the delta was popping out and the gamma was also increasing at the top. So it was confirming that it was an interesting step, not only for me, but for all the group at the same time. Because at the end, we have been recording the result of the field we have been creating and what was recorded on the other side by the mind mirror device through the brain of the gentleman that was attuning to that field.
Beautiful.
And it was also very interesting for me to reflect on the fact that the self-forgiveness step is something which is very useful to take something out of us to make space for having the healing after. Because if you want to take the healing with you, we have to take out something to create some space before. So very well done for me. It has been truly an interesting exercise, and I was very happy to make it together with you.
Great comment. Great observation. We got to clear out before we can let in. Anybody else who hasn't commented? We haven't heard from John Farron or Andrew, Amikar, Christopher. Can we hear anything from you guys and gals?
I just felt a lot of energy throughout. So the forgiveness part was very interesting because the first thing that came to my mind is I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just here to experience life. So I didn't have anything to forgive. But I also envisioned that light is flowing through the subject and clearing his field with white light. I just had that vision throughout that part of it.
That's beautiful, Andrew. That was my experience of you during our practitioner training. Andrew and Bethany both are just about to be certified as Awakened Mind Consciousness trainers. And Andrew consistently had that experience where he's just got such a lovely high consciousness. He's not holding on to things. It's great.
So, Judith, I did a program recently, I mentioned it to you, where we sent peaceful intentions to a woman, and I did look at her data, and I noticed more gamma as well. So I don't know if you want, I could send that over, because maybe we should start measuring, starting to look at what happens when people receive intentions as well as give them.
Sure. Did you keep a good time chronicle? That's always the trick in these things,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, well, we did the beginning of the meditation was centering in the body, then in the heart, and then we had a receive. So I have those outlined. And then the heart, the alpha goes out, and it's so just for I just noticed that our gamma went up when she was receiving. So, and I saw that here. So I was just wondering if that's part of, is that what you see when people receive intentions?
It again depends on the person. If they're receiving it down there in their theta delta, you're liable to see a bottom part of an evolved mind pattern. Some people can block the intention and collapse their alpha. Just depends on where they are. This is, something that Clem said, that his consciousness was moving back and forth into distraction, and then to his aha moments when everything came together, and then we would see that gamma arise. Yeah, in research, of which this program is actually, it's the critical factor is just to nail down every single thing they were experiencing in response to every single event, because that's really the key.
Okay.
That's really the key. So thank you all, unless anybody has any last moment comments.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tony. We loved it.
Thanks, Clem.
We're happy to be the send-off for Cosmo.
Yes, you'll hear more about it.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, everybody. Have a grand weekend. May the weather be beautiful and the world change, the world heal.
And thanks, Clem, for making it and beautiful.
Thank you, Clem. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Bless you all. Till we meet again.